Amina was only 7 the first night she woke up screaming. Her small hands clutched the covers, her glossy braids spilling like a dark halo across the pillow. Her mother, Aisha, hurried into the room, heart pounding, to find her daughter trembling and whispering, "Mama, it feels like someone touched my head." The room was empty, nothing but moonlight and the faint scent of jasmine that always hung in their house on Sundi Street. The only other presence that evening had been a visiting relative who'd smiled at Amina earlier, her Aunt Halima, a woman the family had welcomed many times before with warm food and easy laughter. What began as a seemingly harmless admiration for a child's hair would slowly reveal why every parent must be careful who lays a hand on a child's crown. Aisha had grown up as the younger of 2 sisters in the narrow, colorful alleys of Ojewaro. People said she was born with luck, kind neighbors, a steady husband, a tidy little shop where she sold beadwork and small household goods. Her daughter, Zora, was the light of the house, quick to answer a teacher's question, first to smile at visitors, and proud of a head of dense, beautiful hair that drew compliments wherever she went. Halima's life had been harder. A single mother with a smaller house on the other side of town, she worked long evenings at the market and still seemed to be on the losing end of every turn. Her own child, Laila, struggled at school and lived in the quiet shadow of Zora's brightness. At first Halima accepted Aisha's help with a smile, the rice she brought, the second-hand dress folded neatly into a plastic bag. "Thank you," she would say, hugging Aisha in public. Inside, private and bitter, a different conversation unfolded. She would tell herself, late in the night, "Why must every door open for her while my girl knocks and waits? Why does the world hand Aisha the sun?" Those quiet resentments settled into Halima's bones like an ache. Zora's hair became a focus of that ache, long, full, and everywhere she went people said, "Such hair. God has blessed her." Each compliment fell to Halima like a small, persistent sting. When Halima visited one bright Saturday, Aisha made plantain and eggs and laid out fresh cloths. Laila trailed behind her mother, clutching a small nylon bag of clothes. Zora ran forward, bare feet slapping the tiles. "Auntie Halima," she shouted, throwing her arms around her. Halima bent down to smooth the child's crown, fingers gently raking through the curls. "This hair will not kill me," she laughed, but there was something else under the laughter, a whisper, a chant tucked under her breath that only she heard. After that day, Halima's visits became frequent. She brought hair pomades, little amber bottles of oils, and satin ribbons. She offered to style Zora's hair again and again, rubbing her palms firmly at the crown. To Aisha it looked like devotion, to Zora it felt like tenderness. But Halima hummed often while she touched the child's head, a low, toneless sound that settled into the house like a draft. The humming was never loud, but it was constant, a thread of a song Zora began to hum in her sleep. Slowly, almost without fanfare, Aisha noticed small changes in her daughter. Once bright and responsive, Zora began to lose her sharpness. She would return from the kitchen confused, "Mama, what did you ask me to fetch?" At school her teacher, Miss Coffee, pulled Aisha aside. "Zora is distracted," she said. "She was always so quick. Lately she looks like she's somewhere else." Aisha blamed it on a growth spurt, on too much play, on the new comic books Zora collected. She lay awake at night listening for the humming, rubbing Zora's hair as she slept and wondering if worry had finally unraveled her. Across the neighborhood, Halima's own daughter began to improve. Laila, who had struggled with reading and numbers, suddenly started bringing home small wins. A teacher's note that once went to Aisha was now tucked into Halima's purse for safekeeping. Halima smiled, and the smile hardened into something like satisfaction. One afternoon Aisha's phone chimed. It was Halima. "I bought something special for Zora," she said, voice syrupy. "Just a drop on the crown, it will comb the scalp and help the hair grow." Aisha's husband, Ibrahim, who fixed radios and sold wiring to the local clinics, looked up from a plate and frowned. "She's visiting a lot," he remarked. "Maybe we should watch this." But the visits continued. Halima would present a tiny gold-capped bottle, clear as water, and demonstrate a drop onto Zora's scalp, massaging it in with a hum. Zora would later report a strange lightness at the top of her head, calling it a borrowed feeling. Sometimes electricity would flicker in the middle of the night, a single blink that left the bulb steady again, as if the house had been inhaling and exhaling. At first the oddities were small, a crayon drawing of Zora smiling under a big hand floating above her crown, midterm work that came in with tiny blanks where answers used to be, Zora's sudden pauses when reciting poems she had practiced all week. Each incident was easy to rationalize away, but together they built a pattern that made Aisha's stomach turn. When Ibrahim and Aisha visited Ibrahim's mother, Nana Sod, for a day, Zora ran in the yard and slept like a child exhausted from freedom. There was no humming, no flicker. After that quiet night, Aisha washed pillowcases and put away every bottle Halima had brought, hiding a tiny, looped ribbon she found tucked in Zora's hair beneath the bed. She wanted to believe it had all been a coincidence. But Halima was persistent. She began calling with new promises, a satin bonnet, a miracle cream bought from a herbalist in the market on Moko Lane. Aisha's unease hardened. "If she touches Zora again, tell me," Aisha whispered to her daughter one morning. "Promise." When Halima came the next time, she hummed a little song and offered a green jar with no label. "Test it on Zora," she said. Ibrahim intervened, "Come but firm, if it's as good as you say, use it on Laila first." Halima bristled and made excuses, but the insistence created a crack in her mask. Later, in the kitchen, Aisha heard Halima speak on her phone in a softer, angrier voice. "You must not stop," she hissed. "The child's head is the doorway. If you do not finish, all will slip back. Touch the crown again before you leave." An herbalist's rasping voice answered in the language of bargains and binding. Aisha could not keep quiet. She told Ibrahim every word she had heard. Their fear turned into resolve. They would not accuse Halima and tear the family apart blindly. They would let her fall into her own plan. The trap they set was quiet and terrible in its clarity. When Halima reached for Zora in the morning, Ibrahim stepped between them and said, "No one touches Zora's head in this house without our permission." Halima's composed smile shattered. In the sudden stillness, Aisha picked up the jar Halima had offered and, in a motion driven by both desperation and protectiveness, scooped a palmful and rubbed it heavily into Laila's crown. Halima's protest came too late. Laila blinked, went slack for a breath, and then looked confused. Zora, watching, suddenly hummed the old tune and then, as if a lock had been turned, sat and wrote her name perfectly for the first time in days. Zara, clarity returned to her eyes as if a cloud had blown off. The reversal was instant, shocking in its cruelty and fairness. Everything Halima had siphoned away from Zora came back to her. Everything she had stolen coalesced again onto Zora's bright head, and for the first time Halima saw the cost of her envy. Her own daughter slumped, bewildered, repeating lines she could not remember. Neighbors gathered at the gate, murmurs rising, an old woman shaking her head and whispering, "This is why we guard our children." Halima collapsed, weeping in the street, her pride burned away. She had spoken of envy and been counseled by a stranger with remedies that promised more than nurture. The shame in her voice was raw. The neighborhood would talk for weeks. Aisha and Ibrahim held Zora close that night, the house warm with the ordinary sounds of family, a radio playing softly, a pot on the stove, Zora's laugh bubbling up as she recited a poem from memory. They had learned, in a private and painful way, to watch over what they cherished. "Never again," Aisha said aloud, braiding Zora's hair slowly, reverently. "No one touches her crown without us knowing." Ibrahim agreed, voice steady. In the weeks that followed, the household took practical steps. They made a rule: all visitors asked before touching Zora or any child. Gifts of hair products were politely but firmly declined unless opened in front of the parents. Aisha spoke to Miss Kofi at the school and asked teachers to call if anything unusual showed up in Zora's work. Ibrahim fitted a small latch on the gate and took down the names of people who visited frequently. They also reached out to Halima, not to chastise, but to offer help. Halima declined at first, ashamed, but after a few visits from neighbors and elders who knew the value of reconciliation, she accepted a bowl of rice and a promise to work together in the market sometimes. The community insisted on remembering both the harm and the human behind it. Over time, Laila regained her footing at school with patient tutoring arranged by a neighbor. Halima, stripped of the illusions that had driven her, sought a different form of pride, teaching a younger cousin to mend baskets, learning to read aloud at the market. The neighborhood did not erase what happened, but it gave room for repair, hard-earned and gradual. Zora grew into a child who knew, not only how precious her head of hair was, but how precious her mind and body were as well. Aisha taught her to say no when something felt wrong and to speak up if a touch made her uneasy. They turned those lessons into lullabies and bedtime rules, careful and kind. Moral: a child's body, their hair, their hands, their small shoulders, is not public property. Warmth and familiarity do not automatically mean permission. Love is expressed in ways that respect boundaries, asking, listening, and honoring consent. Envy can wear the face of family and kindness. Protection requires watchful tenderness, not suspicion alone. When harm has been done, accountability and careful reconciliation give room for healing, but only when safety comes first. Guard the crown of a child's destiny with love and with rules, teach children their right to say no, and teach adults to always ask before they